Stories to keep you awake at night. It was a cold October night, and with every breath, you could see it in the air. Luckily, I had a thick jacket to keep me warm. I was locked outside of the house, and banging on the window didn't solve anything. It just garnered the attention of people all around. I carefully went to the back of the house where I sat and waited. Eventually, someone would come outside, and I would be waiting. It must have been about 2 a.m. when I heard the back door unlock. I rose from my spot on the ground and rushed to the door as it opened. I shoved the person back as I forced my way inside. The man I shoved looked at me in fear. I locked the door behind me, and I took in a few breaths. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my Bowie knife. Then I lunged at the man. Me and my friend were sitting on the couch, sitting extremely close, our thighs touching. She had her hands on my leg, and her nails were digging into my leg. I pried her hand free and told her everything will be fine, that it was just a movie. You see, we watched The Ring and coincidentally got a prank call a minute later, telling us that we were all going to die. So she was terrified. I was a bit spooked myself. Not long after the call, we heard somebody knocking at the door, followed by loud knocks on the windows. We had been sitting on the couch in pure fear, unsure of what would happen next. I explained to her that I had to use the bathroom, otherwise I'd piss myself. She nodded in approval. As I got up and walked out, I noticed her shivering, and there was blood dripping from her nose. I couldn't ask about it because I had to go bat. I ran to the bathroom and peed as fast as I could, and I hurried back. She was no longer on the couch. I sat down and waited for her, assuming she was tending to her bloody nose. Suddenly, I heard a growling sound behind me. She was standing there, behind me, her face inches from mine. Her jaw had fallen off, and the skin started plopping off her face and body and falling in a pile of flesh and blood at her feet. What I was looking at was not human. It wasn't even a demon. It was scarier than Satan himself. I felt my heart stop before she even began gnawing on my flesh. My mom was always kind to me, and my brother, and my little sister. You could say she was the ideal parent. Not perfect, because no parent is, but she was close to it. We lived a comfortable life, full of great memories and fun experiences. I love her, with every ounce of love in me. Tonight she ordered us all pizza from a local pizza joint in town, and she called us down to eat. It was strange, because the dining room was slightly dark, lit only by a single candle. I asked why the lights were off. She said, because the electric company was fixing some wires and power had to be off. It was strange and sudden, but I believed her. I looked at my plate. The pizza looked delicious, from what I could tell. It always was. I scooped it up on my hand. I took a big chomp out of it, as did my siblings. We all moaned in delight at the flavor. I noticed Mom hadn't eaten any. In fact, she didn't even have a slice on her plate. I bit into it again and winced in pain as something sharp sliced my mouth open. I cried out, and almost at the same time, my siblings did too. We reached into our mouths and tried to pull out the sharp object. Because of the lighting, I couldn't see what it was, so I grabbed the candle, and it shone bright on a blood-drenched piece of glass. I looked over at my siblings. They were there, but their mouths weren't. They had been sliced off due to the large slices of glass. They dropped their heads onto their plate and died due to blood loss. I looked back to where Mom was sitting, but she wasn't there. Suddenly, the wax from the candle started burning my hand, and I dropped it. It sent the room into total darkness. I could hear Mom breathing somewhere close by. I could hear the faint sound of her grabbing a shard of glass, and felt the slice in my throat as she cut my throat wide open. And I heard the faint sound of her laughing as the lights came on, and the last thing I saw was her smiling back at me, holding that bloody shard of glass. There was a quiet old man who lived at the end of the street, the last house on the left. Nobody dared go anywhere near him. He was a butcher and provided most of the meat for the town grocery stores. There was a myth we spread as kids that if you went to his house and he caught you, he'd slice you open and ground you up and turn you into his special meat to then be sold at the grocery store. It scared all of us kids, but here I am, pedaling on my bike to the last house on the left, at the very end of the street, on a dead end. His house was falling apart. I pedaled close to his house and hopped off my bike. I could hear a saw in the barn in the back. I snuck around and peeked at the barn. The saw was running, but nobody was holding it. Suddenly, I was grabbed from behind and hit across the head with a hammer. When I woke up, I was strapped to a table and he was standing over me holding a hacksaw. It's been a while since a child came to me. For the last 40 years, I've always got them myself. I guess kids are curious about me now. I was gonna make this quick, but I want you to suffer. I want to hear you scream, he said. He cut into my arm and I cried out in pain. Then he stopped and went to my other arm and sawed into it as well. He sliced into my legs. Then he untied me from the table. You're free to go, son, he said. I sat up and jumped off the table and ran. My legs gave away as I reached the barn entrance. They snapped off and began spraying blood. I screamed, even though nobody would hear me. I could hear him laughing over my screams. I tried to crawl, then my arms fell off. I was now just a torso. I was losing blood fast. Okay, enough fun, he said, grabbing my torso and taking me over to the grinder. You'll taste real nice. I'm sure your family will love how good you taste, he said, licking his lips. He started the grinder and shoved me in. I felt my body get ground up and then the end. If you would like to hear more, let me know down below. Hit like if you enjoyed this, subscribe if you have not already, hit that bell to get notified anytime I make a video or stream. Keep up to date on the channel so there's some crazy going on, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.